Gaius Plinius Caecilius Secundus,
Gaius Plinius Caecilius Secundus,
known as Pliny the Elder,
known as Pliny the Elder,
was born in Italy in the year AD 23.
was born in Italy in the year AD 23.
He was a naval and army commander in the early Roman Empire.
He was a naval and army commander in the early Roman Empire.
Later an author,
Later an author,
naturalist, and
naturalist,
natural philosopher,
and natural philosopher.
best known for his Naturalis Historia,
Best known for his Naturalis Historia,
a 37-volume encyclopedia describing, well,
in 37 encyclopedia describing, well,
everything there was to describe.
everything there was to describe.
His opus includes a book on cosmology,
His opus includes a book on cosmology,
another on farming,
another on farming,
a third on magic.
a third on magic.
It took him 4 volumes to cover world geography.
It took him 4 volumes to cover world geography,
9 for flora and fauna, and
9 for flora and fauna,
another 9 for medicine.
and another 9 for medicine.
In one of his later volumes,
In one of his later volumes,
Earth,
Earth,
Book 35,
Book 35,
Pliny tells us the story of a goldsmith
Pliny tells the story of a goldsmith
who brought an unusual dinner plate
who brought an unusual dinner plate
to the court of Emperor Tiberius.
to the court of Emperor Tiberius.
The plate was a stunner,
The plate was a stunner,
made from a new metal,
made from a new metal,
very light,
very light,
shiny,
shiny,
almost as bright as silver.
almost as bright as silver.
The goldsmith claimed he'd extracted it from
The goldsmith claimed he'd extracted it
plain clay, using a
from plain clay,
secret technique,
using a secret technique,
the formula known only to himself
the formula known only to himself
and the gods.
and the gods.
Tiberius, though, was a little concerned.
Tiberius was a little concerned.
The emperor was one of Rome's great generals.
The emperor was one of Rome's great generals,
A warmonger who conquered most of what is now Europe and amassed
a warmonger who conquered most of what is now Europe
a fortune of gold and silver along the
and amassed a fortune of gold and silver along the
way. He was also a financial expert who knew the value of his treasure would seriously decline if people
He was also a financial expert who knew the value of his treasure would seriously decline if people suddenly had access to a shiny new metal rarer than gold.
People suddenly had access to a shiny new metal rarer than gold. Therefore, recounts Pliny, instead of giving the goldsmith the regard expected,
instead of giving the goldsmith the regard expected,
he ordered him to be beheaded.
He ordered him to be beheaded.
This shiny new metal was aluminum.
This shiny new metal was aluminum. Aluminum.
And that beheading marked its loss to the world for nearly
And that beheading marked its loss to the world
2 millennia.
For nearly 2 millennia.
It next reappeared during the early 1800s, but was
It next reappeared during the early 1800s.
still rare enough to be considered the most valuable metal in
but was still rare enough to be considered the most valuable metal in the world.
the world. Napoleon III himself threw a banquet for the King of Siam,
Napoleon III himself threw a banquet for the King of Siam,
where the honored guests were given aluminum
where the honored guests were given aluminum
utensils, while the others had to make
utensils,
do with gold.
while the others had to make do with gold.
Aluminum's rarity comes down to chemistry.
Aluminum rarity comes down to chemistry.
Technically, behind oxygen and silicon,
Technically, behind oxygen and silicon,
it's the third most abundant element in the Earth's crust.
it's the third most abundant element in the Earth's crust,
Making up 8.3% of the weight of the world.
making up 8.3% of the weight of the world.
Today it's cheap, ubiquitous, and
Today, it's cheap, ubiquitous,
used with a throwaway mindset.
and used with the throwaway mindset.
But as Napoleon's banquet demonstrates,
But as Napoleon's banquet demonstrates,
this wasn't always the case.
this wasn't always the case.
Because of aluminum's high affinity for oxygen,
Because of aluminum's high affinity for oxygen,
it never appears in nature as a pure metal.
it never appears in nature as a pure metal.
Instead, it's found tightly bound as oxides and
Instead, it's found tightly bound as oxides
silicates in a clay-like
and silicates in a clay-like
material called
material called
bauxite.
bauxite.
While bauxite is 52% aluminum,
While bauxite is 52% aluminum,
separating out the pure metal ore was a complex and difficult task.
separating out the pure metal ore was a complex and difficult task.
But between 1825 and 1845,
But between 1825 and 1845,
Hans Christian Ørsted and Frederick Wohler
Hans Christian Ørsted and Frederick Wohler
discovered that heating anhydrous aluminum chloride with
discovered that heating anhydrous aluminum chloride
potassium amalgam and
with potassium amalgam
then distilling away the
and then distilling away the mercury
mercury left a residue of pure aluminum.
left a residue of pure aluminum.
In 1854,
And 1854,
Henri Saint-Clair de Ville
Henry Saint Clair de Ville
created the first commercial process for extraction,
created the first commercial process for extraction,
driving down the price by 90%.
driving down the price by 90%.
Yet the metal was still costly and in short
Yet the metal was still costly and in short supply.
supply. It was the creation of a new breakthrough
It was the creation of a new breakthrough technology
technology known as electrolysis,
known as electrolysis,
discovered independently and almost simultaneously in
discovered independently and almost simultaneously in 1886
1886 by American chemist Charles Martin Hall
by American chemist Charles Martin Hall
and Frenchman Paul Héroux
and Frenchman Paul Héroux.
that changed everything.
That changed everything.
The Hall-Héroux process
The whole Héroux process,
as it is now known,
as it is now known,
uses electricity to liberate aluminum from
Uses electricity to liberate aluminum from bauxite. From bauxite.
Suddenly, everyone on the planet had access to ridiculous amounts of cheap, light, pliable metal.
Suddenly, everyone on the planet had access to ridiculous amounts of cheap, light, pliable metal.
Save the beheading, there's nothing too unusual in this story.
Save the beheading. There is nothing too unusual in the story.
History is littered with tales of once rare resources made plentiful by innovation.
History littered with the tales of once rare resources made plentifully by innovation.
The reason is pretty straightforward.
The reason is pretty straightforward.
Scarcity is often contextual.
Scarcity is often contextual.
Imagine a giant orange tree packed with fruit.
Imagine a giant orange tree packed with fruit.
If I pluck all the oranges from the lower branches,
If I pluck all the oranges from the lower branches,
I am effectively out of accessible fruit.
I am effectively out of accessible fruit.
From my limited perspective,
From a limited perspective,
oranges are now scarce.
oranges are now scarce.
But once someone invents a piece of technology called a ladder,
But once someone invents a piece of technology called a ladder,
I've suddenly got new reach.
I've suddenly got new reach.
Problem solved.
Problem solved.
Technology is a resource liberating mechanism.
Technology is a resource liberating mechanism.
It can make the once scarce the now abundant.
It can make the once scarce the now abundant.
To expand on this a bit, let's take
To expand on this a bit,
a look at the planned city of Masdar. Now,
let's take a look at the planned city of Masdar,
under construction by the Abu Dhabi Future Energy
now under construction by the Abu Dhabi Future Energy
Company. Located on the edge of Abu Dhabi,
Located on the edge of Abu Dhabi,
out past the oil refinery and the
out past the oil refinery
airport, Masdar
and the airport,
will soon house 50,000 residents.
Masdar will soon house 50,000 residents,
while another 40,000 work there.
while another 40,000 work there.
They will do so without producing any waste
They will do so without producing any waste
or releasing any carbon.
or releasing